Going to be looking at finding percent of a percent, and really that means that our percentages just end up stacking on top of each other. So when we were looking at things like GST and PST, we were able to add those percentages together to get something called HST, which is that harmonized sales tax. Now in these examples, we are not going to be able to add our percentages together. Okay, so in this one it says a snowboard costs $250. So it goes on sale for 20% off, right? The next day, they further reduce the price by 20% off of the sale price. So here's the key word right there, 20% off of that sale price. And it says, what is the cost on the second day? So when we have something like this, I'm going to split it into two separate calculations. I'm going to look at what happens on day one, and I'm going to look at what happens on day two. So on day number one, we are going to take that snowboard that costs $250, and it's going to go on sale for 20% off. Okay, so I want to find the discount, and I need to find 20% of that $250. Okay, I need to know how much money they're going to take away off of that snowboard. So I change my 20% into its decimal form, that's 0.2, of changes 2 times, and then that 250 is going to stay as 250. And so in total, that gives me $50. So on that first day, there's a $50 discount, which means the snowboard would now cost, it started as $250, we take away $50, and now that snowboard on the second day would cost $200. Okay, now on the second day, here's the key word. The next day, they further reduce the price by 20% off the sale price. So I have to take this sale price from day one and move it to my day two. So I'm not going to have the same 20% that I did in the first question. I'm taking 20% of my sale price, which is the $200. Okay, so they are taking the percent of an already reduced item. So it's percent of a percent. So I would take that $20 or 20%, write it as 0.2 of, write it as multiply, and the 200 gets to stay as a 200. When we multiply those together, we end up getting $40. So on the second day, they're going to take that cost of $200 for the snowboard and subtract $40. And now the cost of the snowboard would be $160. Okay, so what is the cost on the second day? The cost would be $160. So we had to take 20% off of the original price on day one. On day two, because it says off of the sale price, I took my sale price from day one and brought it over to day two, and then I took my 20% off of that sale price. Okay, now this is not a 40% discount. Okay, I'm not allowed to add them together. So here's what it would look like. If I had started off and I found 40% of 250, thinking I could simply combine them together, this would give me 0.4 times 250, and this would be $100. But that's not how much money we took off, right? That would mean my new cost for the snowboard would be $150. But that's not what we got. We got that the cost of the snowboard was going to be $160. So it is not a 40% discount because I'm not allowed to add these two things together. I'm not allowed to add them together because my second day is not 20% off of the regular price, it's 20% off of the sale price. Okay, which means I'm finding a percentage on a percentage. So this doesn't actually work. I can't do that. What I did was the first day we took off $50, the second day we took off $40, and in total we removed $90 from the cost. So if I wanted to know what is the single percent deduction, you might be asked about that in some of your questions, we removed $90 out of our total $250. Okay, so we had $90 removed or discounted, and the total was $250 to start with. Now, if I change that fraction into its decimal, that is going to give me 0.36 numerator divided by denominator, 90 divided by 250 is 0.36. And when we change that into a percentage, it's 36%. So I didn't take a full 40% off. And the reason I didn't take a full 40% off is when I found 20% on the second day, I was finding 20% of an already smaller number. And that's different than this 20%. It's 20% of two different numbers. Okay, so you're not allowed to just combine discounts like that. Okay? You'll often see the same thing when you're looking at anything to do with banking. When you deal with compound interest or things like a loan and your interest rate on a loan, interest compounds upon interest, which means your percentage keeps applying to your other percentage. Okay, here's kind of another example of it going the other way. So a population of birds is 1,000. This population is going to grow by 10% every year. How many birds will there be after 3 years? Okay, so if we look at this as 3 separate years, so I'm going to look at year number 1. In year number 1, our population of birds is going to get 10% bigger. So I need to find 10% of 1,000. 10% of 1,000 is the same thing as 0.1 times 1,000, and that gives me 100. So at the end of year 1, my 1,000 birds have added 10 more percent, and now we have 1,100 birds flying around in the sky. Okay. Now, in the second year, there are more birds that are going to increase the population, right? The first year there was only 1,000 birds that could all get together and have little bird babies. But now in year 2, there are 100 extra birds that can now also have their own little baby birds, right? So I'm going to find 10% of my previous total. My total now is 1,100. So I need to find 10% of 1,100. So that's 0.1 times 1,100, which is 110. So I started with 1,100 birds at the beginning of year 2. By the end of the year, we'd added 10%, which is 110 more birds, and now we have 1,210 birds at the end of year 2. And then at the end of year 3, we have even more birds that can get together and have little bird babies. So I'm going to need to find 10% of my new bird population, which is 1,210. And that's 0.1 times 1,210, and that is 121. So I'm going to take my original population at the start of the year, which was 1,210. I'm going to add 121, and that gives me 1,311. Now, after 3 years, I have 1,311. I did not simply add 100 each year, right? I didn't say, well, it grows by 10% every year. 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30%. So if it's 100, it should be 300, but it's not. My original population has gone from 1,000 to 1,331. I have 31 more birds than I thought I maybe would have. And that's because my percent increase each year increases upon an increase that has already happened. So this number gets 10% bigger, and then the 10% bigger number gets 10% bigger again. And then the number that got 10% bigger here, now 10% of that one. So the number keeps building on itself. So if we looked, if we had 1,331 birds by the end of year 3. We started with 1,000. That means we had 331 new birds. 331 new birds compared to our total of 1,000, when we change that into a decimal, is 0.331. And when we change that into a percent, it would be 33.1%. So our number of birds in 3 years, compared to where they started, increases by 33.1%. Not just 30%. Okay, so the whole idea is percent of a percent means that percent adds on, and then your percent the next time adds on to what's already been added on. Okay, and so that's what we would refer to, and you'll hear more as we look at different examples as you get older, things like compound interest, things like mortgages, all of the interest builds upon interest, and it can snowball and get very big very quickly. Okay, that's percent of a percent.